This is, I guess people could argue with this, but they couldn't argue much. This is the most important committee at ASHRAE, and you are now a part of the most important committee at ASHRAE, and the work you do is extremely important. And so today, the summer meeting, the annual meeting that ASHRAE has, we have a nominating committee meeting. This is it. At the same time that we will meet in the winter, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. This is not really a mandatory meeting. The other meetings we'll talk about are clearly mandatory, again, because this is most important. So here's our agenda for the day. There's two parts to this program, and the second part is labeled the responsibilities of the regional people, and it's all about how you do your caucuses and all of that stuff at the region. That does not mean that all of you who are not regional people get to leave at the end of part one, because the information that we're going to talk about in this second part is really valuable for everyone that sits at the Society Nominating Committee to know about how we get to where we are and all of that. These are your learning objectives for today. We need to understand what our mission is. We need to talk about what we're looking for in our candidates, and we're going to talk about the procedures that we are going through, and then we have a little bit of homework here, okay? So here's our mission. If you don't know this, you should. If you have been part of ASHRAE long enough to be sitting here at on this committee, advance the arts and sciences of HVAC&R to serve humanity and promote a sustainable world. That's our mission statement. And you should keep that in mind as you're doing the work that we do here at nominating. So let's get into part one. This is essential information for everyone who is sitting here today. And this is the nominating committee. There are a lot of members in nominating. We take a big room when we meet. There's a chair and a vice chair. The chair is president from 2 years ago. The vice chair is always the immediate past president. And then there is one member and one alternate and a reserve alternate, and we'll talk about that in a minute, from each region. So there are 14 regions. So when we have our meeting, you'll have 28 people here that are representing the regional membership. And then there are 8 members that are elected by the board and 8 alternates that are elected by the board. So it's a big group, you know, and it's important that we have this kind of representation and this kind of balance. We don't want any one region sort of not dominating the whole thing. That's our membership. The process at the board of directors for selecting those of you who are board representatives, but there's a subcommittee that is appointed at the board of directors. That subcommittee goes through a list of available candidates, and then the board takes that list and again elects 8 members and 8 alternates to sit here at this committee. If you are here from a region, each region selects one person to represent that region as the member and one person to represent that region as an alternate, and then you should have a reserve alternate in case something happens and one of your representatives cannot serve. So how do you get to sit here at the table as you're looking for people to serve at nominating? You have to be a member grade or higher of ASHRAE for at least 5 years. When you serve on nominating, unless you serve as society president, you can only serve 6 years. There are motions coming forward at this meeting to change that. We'll see what happens. But right now, as we sit here today, you get to serve on nominating for 6 years. I served on nominating a while back for 6 years straight, and so I was done. until I got to go through the chairs and serve as ASHRAE president, which gives you another 2 years. But other than that, you get 6 years. Again, there are some motions coming forward. Don't know what's going to happen with that. We've had a little bit of exposure to what was in those motions. Bill Bonfleth, who is the outgoing chair of this committee, shared that with the outgoing committee. So we'll see what happens. This question came up a few minutes ago. People were walking in, well, I can go to the fall meeting, but not the winter meeting, or vice versa. Well, if you go to one meeting, that counts as a year. If you know you're not going to be able to attend both meetings, it's kind of up to you what you want to do. But if you know you're not going to attend one of those meetings, do you want to waste your whole year? I don't know. It's up to you. But it does count as having served 1 year if you attend either the fall or the winter meeting. So let's talk about why we're here and what our responsibilities are. This is the number one responsibility for everybody in this room. Yes, sir?
Does it apply to alternates and reserve alternates too?
Yes. Well, let me clarify that a little bit. If you're a reserve alternate and you are now going to go to the fall meeting or the winter meeting, that means that you're no longer the reserve alternate. That means one of the other two have dropped out and everybody moves up, okay? And so, but if you are an alternate or a member and you attend one of those meetings, that counts as 1 year. Yes? Good question. On the screen there is the number one reason we're here. We are here to select the best candidates for positions at the board of directors. That is why this committee is so important. You are here to select the leadership of this society. That's your primary responsibility. And you should always keep this in mind. The office seeks the person does not seek the office. We've had over the years, again, I've sat on this committee for 6 years, I saw all kinds of things going on. I saw people campaigning. I saw folks one year that had a group of a whole committee that they had solicited to run around while we were here and just talk about how great a person they were. They were really, really, really seeking the office. Guess what? They didn't get there, because that's not why we're here. We are here to find the right person to sit in the various positions at the board of directors. The office seeks the person. And then when we finish, we will present a list of who we think is the right person for that office, and there is only one nominee per position. Now that is also being discussed a little bit. Currently, we select one person, and then and that's who is put on the ballot for that position when the ballot goes to the membership. There has been some discussion about changing that and giving folks a choice when the ballot goes to the membership. So let's talk a little bit about the type of people that we're going to be looking for. There's some quotes up here. These are kind of neat. These are different people through history and their definitions of leadership. I thought some of this was actually really good. I like the last one there. Leadership is defined by the results. That's great. And so what are we looking for? I'm not going to read all this. You can read, I hate just reading PowerPoint slides, but this is a good list of the attributes that we're looking for the people that we're going to talk about for the open positions on the board of directors. And some of those are really important, and we'll talk about it in just a minute. Is that person a communicator? That's it. That's really important. You're sitting on the board of directors, or if you are one of the people being talked about for treasurer, you will be president of ASHRAE. And if that person can't stand up and talk without stepping on his tie, you know, is that the kind of person you want to be your leader? Diplomatic, I thought that was a really good one on this slide. You got to know how to think on your feet, because you will be asked to do all kinds of, make all kinds of decisions. Some other attributes. Understands ASHRAE. You know, you don't get to be on the board of directors unless you've had some good experience, but do you understand what it is you're doing? You know, that's really important. Having a record of ASHRAE leadership is most important. You've got to have some experience in how to deal with people. That last bullet point is really, you are representing the membership. There's a quote here that I thought was really good. You know, a leader is best when people don't know he's there. Just let me throw in a couple more comments here. Everybody that you're going to talk about is potentially the president of ASHRAE. You have to be on the board, you know, to be considered to be president. You have to first have served on the board. So all these people that you're going to talk about for the DAL positions and the DRC positions could potentially one day be the president. The person that you are talking about for vice president, or certainly the person we're going to select as the new treasurer, they're going up to be the president of ASHRAE. You need to be sure that that person can leave his ego at the door. This is not about him or her. It's about serving the membership. If we have a candidate who may have the greatest record in the world, but they're doing this for themselves, that's the wrong person. You have to check your ego at the door. You have to understand that you are representing a membership of 56,000 people, and you are the face of the organization. Sometimes it's hard, and you will see this in the coming months when we're talking about people. Sometimes it's going to be hard to kind of see through that. And that's why all of the attributes on these last two slides are really, really important. Okay, so what are we going to do this year? We're going to have 2 more meetings. We'll talk a little bit more detail in a minute about them. And both of them are in closed session. There will be a sign on the door, closed. Nobody coming in and out. The first meeting we have during the year is the one you're sitting at right now. Again, it's not a mandatory meeting, but it is good that we've got almost all of the committee here. I think that's great. Even folks that have been on nominating for a while, or you know, you're here listening to this. That's great. That's because you know, it's always good to get refreshed, even if you've been sitting here for a while, and plus things change. So then we have 2 meetings, as I mentioned a second ago, where we will work to select the best people for the job. One meeting is in the fall. There are more details that will be coming about this, but you need to put this on your calendar right now. You've already been notified once, but I don't know that you paid attention to it. October the 22nd and 23rd, that's a weekend in Atlanta. We will go through what is affectionately known as the Fall Shakeout. And then at the winter meeting, we will meet again to make the final selections. And that's Sunday morning until we get finished. Here are the answers to some of the questions that some of you already asked again this morning. If a region elected member, how many of you are the member from your region? If for some reason you cannot attend the meeting, then you're no longer the member for that year. The alternate moves up to the member, and if you can't attend at all, the reserve alternate will move up and become the alternate, okay? And that's what that second bullet is all about. Yes, ma'am?
Last winter in Orlando, because of the storm, I had several people member's going to be there, we don't need an alternate there. And in at least one region, I'm glad I pushed and said you need someone there. Because that storm affected some people getting there, which means that your region has no voice, no vote, nothing. So when I pushed to have you find someone, if you don't have a member and an alternate coming, it's because you don't know what's going to happen. Like Mr. Curl and the Panthers getting stars in the playoffs. So I think that's really important. So when I push in the region to make sure that you have two people there, it's because anything can happen, and you don't want your region to be left unrepresented.
Irene, yes?
I have a question. If you have been alternate already for 3 years, you can't step back to this position. When I'm a member,
Yes?
and I can't attend the meeting,
Yes?
then I step back to being the alternate.
For that year. For that year.
And I can do that even if I have already served 3 years as an alternate?
Yes?
Okay.
Yes. The 6 years, by the way, that's a good question. So everybody should understand this. The 6 years that you serve, max, it can be any combination. It doesn't mean 3 and 3. It means you can be a member for all 6 years. In fact, I was a member for 4 years and an alternate for 2 during the 6 years that I was on nominating before this. Any combination, you could be an alternate all 6 years. You could be there's no rule about that. It just says you can serve as a member or an alternate for 6 years, and that's all. Yes, that's a good question. Yes?
The board elected members, so the person cannot serve more than 6 years when nominated as a member.
Right.
Now, for the board elected members, this term, is it part of the 6 years?
Yes, yes. So if you serve 2 years representing RAL, for example, and then you were elected by the board to be a board elected member for another 2 years, you've served 4 years. It doesn't matter whether you came from your region or you came from the board, it starts to count toward your maximum of 6 years. Good questions. If a region doesn't have anybody at the fall meeting, nobody, then the region gets no vote. You have to be there at the fall meeting and participate in the discussions in the fall shakeout. Otherwise, your region is not going to have a vote. You might show up at the winter meeting when we're making the final selection, and I guess you could have some voice, but you got no vote. So you need to be sure, all of you who are regional folks, you need to be sure at least one person, the member or the alternate, is going to be there in October in Atlanta. Otherwise, your region is not going to have any say-so in the matter, okay? And once in a while, people will decline, things happen, and all of a sudden, a region has nobody. You know, you may have selected a member or an alternate, but stuff happens, okay? And so now you've got nobody representing your region. In that case, it is the responsibility of your DRC, your Director and Regional Chair, to pick a representative so that your region has some say in who we're picking here. Okay, these are all things that affect the regional representatives. Those of you who are board elected, none of this applies to you because there's 8 members and 8 alternates, and if somebody goes away, we got enough of a pool, you know, to fill in. Speaking of the board elected members, if you are a member but you missed the meeting, you're no longer a member. You become an alternate, and one of the alternates will be moved up to take your place as a member. Those of you that are elected by the board, if you miss the meeting for whatever reason, you will become an alternate for the rest of that year. Now, you might be a member again next year, but for the rest of the year, when this happened, you will be an alternate. And then the last bullet point we've already mentioned 2 or 3 times. If you show up at any one of the meetings, if you show up at the fall meeting and you can't attend the winter meeting, or you didn't come to the fall but you decided to come to the winter meeting, that counts as a full year of activity against your 6 years on nominating. So now let's talk about the closed door of nominating committee. And this, if you don't get anything else this morning, you need to understand this very clearly. Everything we do in this room, except for this session this morning, the summer meeting, is not confidential. But starting in the fall, you know, what happens in Atlanta stays in Atlanta. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas next winter. You cannot divulge anything that happens in this room, not to your wife or husband or best friend or the chapter chairman who's standing outside the door waiting. You cannot divulge anything that's happening in this room. And that includes all of this list of stuff here. Even if you're taking notes, those notes are yours. You cannot talk about this with anybody because it affects the discussions that we're going to have. If you know that something you are getting ready to say about a candidate is going to be known around the world 10 minutes after you say it, you're liable not to talk and say things that should be said. You need to be sure that everything that you do is kept confidential, because we as a group need to be sure that our discussions are frank and open and honest. You know, if someone who's proposed for a particular position shouldn't be in that position for some reason, we need to know what that reason is, and we need to talk about it. And we don't need to be concerned that what we're going to say is going to be out of here. This group has not always lived up to this principle. I was in nominating one year, and I walked out the door of the nominating committee meeting, and I didn't get down the hall before someone came up to me and said, "I heard you talked about da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and why didn't, and I heard he lost by 2 votes, and I mean, how the hell do you know that stuff? You know, that's just wrong. That is just wrong. And that really gets in the way of us doing our job, okay? Including what?
Including in the restrooms.
Oh.
We have breaks.
Yeah.
Because there are times at headquarters and at these meetings where there are other people in the restrooms and we have breaks, and they're not part of this meeting. And the spouse thing is important because some candidates found out from their wife that they were the candidate.
Yes, sir?
This is forever.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the candidate that you're voting on may someday be a candidate for the same position a year or 2 later. And you just gotta, you can't say anything.
Yep. That's good. Yep. I mean, that's, again, what happens in Vegas is going to stay in Vegas, you know, and Richard's absolutely right. You know, you can't, even though 5 years has gone by, you know, if we were talking about somebody in this room that needs to stay right here. So because of a couple of the instances like the one I went through, where people knew about it 5 minutes after the meeting ended, we've instituted some procedures over the years. One is there is a confidentiality agreement that you have to sign. I think you've been sent that agreement already. A couple of you have already signed it and brought it up to us this morning. It's a confidentiality agreement that says you're not going to divulge anything that happens in this room. We have had a couple people over the years say, "I'm not signing that." Then fine, there's the door. You're not a part of the committee if you do not sign this agreement. That's how important this is. I'm not trying to be melodramatic, but this is really, really, really important. And if you have any qualms about signing this agreement or following these rules, then you probably need to leave and we'll get a replacement for you, okay? This is really, really important because the discussions we have cannot be inhibited. Yes, sir. Yeah, if you sign, good question. If you signed this agreement last year, they're gone. You have to sign this agreement now for this year, okay? But you do have to sign a new one every year because the membership on this committee changes. So, this is what happens in the fall. Several weeks prior to the meeting, you're going to get access. We used to send all this out in a box. The shipping charges were enormous. You know, it was a big 4 or 5 binders with everybody's bio, 128 candidates and everybody's bio, and we don't do that anymore. You will get a link to an FTP site where all of this information can be downloaded. That link has a password on it. That password is good only for this committee. Please do not share that password. That is actually part of the confidentiality. Yes?
Fall meeting and winter meeting, because of some dynamics.
Yeah, and it will change. After the fall meeting, we're going to change. We change the password because lots of information on that site, it changes. So what we do at the fall meeting is, again, this is the fall shakeout. We will have a long list of candidates. We need to leave Atlanta with that list down to a reasonable number. There may be 50 candidates for the 3 DAL positions, for example. And we need to leave Atlanta where we're down to, who knows, 6 or 8 candidates that we can talk about. We may have 10 or 12 candidates for treasurer. We need to leave Atlanta where we've shaken it down to the 2 or 3 or 4 candidates that are really viable candidates. Anybody who, we'll talk about this in a minute more, but keep the thought process going. Anybody who wants to be on the list of considered candidates, it's very easy. All you have to do is be suggested by somebody. We'll talk a little bit more in a minute about CRCs, but you could be suggested by your regional caucus. You could be suggested by current board members. You could be suggested by your friend. And anybody whose name is suggested is going to have their information posted on this FTP site for us to consider. Yes, sir.
Is it legitimate for people on the nominating committee to suggest candidates?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why you're here. If you know of a candidate and you're sitting on this committee, don't be quiet about it. Tell us who it is so we can talk about that person. Yes, sir. Absolutely. We leave Atlanta with a list of candidates. I'm going to interject something in here. The current rules say that even after Atlanta in the fall, we can add names to the final list. You know, the nominations are open all the time, basically. Well, in practicality, that doesn't work. Over the years, we've made some changes to procedures for good reason. We do, for example, background checks on all of the list of candidates that are going to be considered at the winter meeting. That's not new, but it's relatively new in the process. We also ask the final list of candidates to fill in questionnaires and provide us material so that you can really understand how they're thinking and the processes that you may, the kind of stuff that you would like to know about somebody, okay? So that you can decide if one person's better than another. And all that happens between Atlanta and the winter meeting. So if we get to the winter meeting and somebody says, oh, by the way, I've really been thinking about this and I'd really like to nominate Joe Blow for this position. It's too late. First of all, we can't do a background check on Joe Blow. That takes a little while. And they haven't filled out the questionnaire and gone through some of the interview process we do. And it's not fair to the candidates that were selected in the fall that had to go through all that process. And it's not fair to our membership. So one of the things that we're going to do officially this year is close the nominations when we leave the Atlanta meeting. And we can do that by a motion, which is what we're going to do. We can also change our rules, which is also what we're going to do. From between now and Atlanta, I'm going to take a look at, and I may be calling on a couple of you to help me rewrite the rules a little bit, just to bring our procedures up to the written procedures up to the way we actually do things now, okay? So the point of the conversation is that the nominations are going to be closed when we leave Atlanta. So we need to be sure we got the right folks on the list when we leave Atlanta. If we got all these nitwits on the list, then you're going to pick a nitwit, okay? So you need to be sure that we have the right list of people when we leave Atlanta. The nominations are going to be closed for every position when we leave Atlanta. So then the last bullet point on here is that when we leave Atlanta, we'll have a closed list of candidates, and all of those candidates will be notified right after Atlanta. And by the 1st of December, they will know that they're on the list. We have to then contact them and say, you have been suggested to be an officer or a member of the board of ASHRAE. A, do you want your name to go forward? B, are you willing to submit to a background check? And then those candidates respond to that letter. And that letter has to go out by December 1st, otherwise we're not going to have time to get all the information back before the winter meeting, okay? Yes, sir?
You may already have this on your agenda, but can you explain what happens if someone in this room is nominated?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to talk about that. I thought about that last night. I was reviewing these slides again last night, and I don't think there's a slide in here about that. But what Walter's talking about is the group that goes to Atlanta might not be this group. Because I think there is a slide about this when we get to the regional discussion. At your CRCs that are coming up in August and September, those of you that have fall CRCs, you might get nominated, you personally might get nominated for a position on the board of directors by your regional people, by anybody's regional people. Or your best friend may have sent a letter in that says, I really think this person should be on the board of directors of ASHRAE, and therefore your name is on the list. And if your name is on the list, you will get what we used to call the big decision letter. And it says your name has been suggested for a position on the board of directors, but you are also a member of nominating, and you can't be on nominating if your name is being considered. So your big decision is, which way do you want to go? If you want to stay on nominating, then you have to turn down the offer to be considered for a position. If you want to advance and be on the board and have your name considered for whatever position on the board that it's being considered for, then you have to resign from the nominating committee. And I can tell you probably about 10% of this group here won't be with us in the fall, just because, which is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That means people think enough of you to recommend you for a position on the board, and and you have accepted that you want to be considered. That's a good thing. So it's not a bad thing. But all of these procedures that we just talked about in terms of alternates moving to members and all that starts to jump into play, okay? So everybody understand all this. And we leave Atlanta, we're going to have a list of the final cut, so to speak. These are the names that we're going to, that have made the first cut and the fall shakeout, and will be considered at the winter meeting. So then we go to Las Vegas, and this is the procedures at the winter meeting. We deliberate on a list of candidates that were proposed at the fall meeting. That's all we do. You wouldn't believe how long that takes. And it's good. That's good because you are sitting in probably the most important committee on ASHRAE for good reason, because we are picking our leaders. We're picking our leadership. There's nothing more important than that. And so our deliberations may take a while. I've sat in on those winter meetings where we were out of there in an hour. That's because there were clearly names that rose right to the top. And I have sat there where 5 minutes to 12, we still hadn't picked a couple people. And the board of directors is going to meet in an hour, and we had to bring them a list, and we weren't ready. I mean, so it really depends. But in both cases, that was the procedure. People talk about people, and well, we didn't do such a good job. Well, we did. The system really does work, and it's been proven over the years. We vote, and it's kind of a especially for treasurer and vice president, it's a secret ballot. You write, we have a lot of pieces of paper, and we'll write a name down, and then we'll have a tally group that keeps track of the votes, and we have a whole procedure we'll follow. We can talk about when we get there. And we keep going until someone's selected. And what this slide is telling you is there is a procedure that we follow once the folks are selected to properly notify folks. We will designate certain people to get hold of the folks that were elected, and we will designate people to get hold of the folks that were not elected, because they're patting their foot as well. They know they're on the list. They have agreed to all of the things that a candidate, and they have to be notified that, sorry, you didn't make it. And what we'll do is we'll designate people to make those calls. If somebody from your region, for example, we might get in, if they're good friends of yours, we might get them to, get you to call them and give them the good news or the bad news. So then the chair of the nominating committee goes before the board of directors early in the Sunday board meeting and announces the new slate of officers to the board. The last bullet point there is very important. Those are nominees that we announce. And yes, there's only one name in each position, and I don't know of any time in all the many, many years I've been in ASHRAE where all those names weren't elected. But it's still not official until the society membership votes on the slate of nominees, and they're officially elected, which doesn't happen actually until the summer meeting. So all of you who are incoming whatevers on the board, anybody who's an incoming somebody on the board, they're not officially elected until it's announced at the voting results. So who are we voting for this year? The president's up there, but we're not voting for him. The president-elect automatically moves up to be president. Bjarne Olsen will be president-elect for 2016-17. So he will automatically move into the presidency for the year that we are voting for. And let me make that point. The officers and directors that we are voting for and talking about will take office for the year 17-18. So Bjarne will be president in 17, 18. Everybody else under the name president up here, we have to pick. Now, the president-elect is normally the current treasurer. Procedurally, the treasurer moves up to president-elect, but we have to confirm that as a group. We have to say, yes, the current treasurer did a great job, let's move him up to president-elect. Or her, thank you. Generic discussion. Move him or her up to president-elect. Move the person up, thank you, David. Move the person up to president-elect. So then we are looking for a person to fill the treasurer position. And so this is when the discussion starts. You will have a list of really qualified folks, probably, and you got to pick one. They are ranked in order, so if the one you pick turns you down, then you go to the next one. But you basically picked one person for treasurer. So when I go before the board, and those of you who have done this, Gordon and Ron and Tom, you go before the board, you're reading one name. When I go before the board in Vegas, we got one name for treasurer. But getting to that one name, this is where the fun starts, because we talked about these folks in Atlanta for 2 days, and now we got to pick one of the list to move forward. So then the next group is the vice presidents. So then in the vice presidents, we picked 4. 2 of them should be already picked for you, because the vice president position is normally a 2-year spot. And so those who are starting their first year, in this case, Ginger Scoggins and Edward Sui, they're starting their first year as VP this year, okay? So they would, unless they fall on their face and we as the nominating committee say, wow, we need to get rid of that person, they normally will move into their second year as VP. The VP is typically a 2-year term. So 2 of the 4 candidates we have to pick are going to be pretty easy. But then we got to pick 2 more. And again, we will go through this until you're sick of it in Atlanta about who's qualified and who's not, but we will probably have a list of, I don't know, 5 or 6 or more people to talk about when we get to Vegas that made the cut in Atlanta that would be really good VPs, and we got to pick 2 to be first-year vice presidents. We have the DRCs and the DALs we have to pick, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Any questions about this? This basically is just a list of the board, okay? And I should have flipped to this slide here a minute ago. This is the list of who we really have to pick this year, okay? The 4 VPs we just talked about. This year we have 5 DRCs. Now, there's always a discussion about why we're looking at DRC lists. All of you who are regional nominating people, you get to your caucus, which we're going to talk about in just a little while, and you pick who you want to be your DRC, and you submit that, and you think the nominating committee doesn't pick DRCs. Our region picked our DRC. This is who we want to lead our region. Wrong. What you are supposed to do, and I don't want to get into this because that's part of the next part 2 of our discussion here, but you submit a list of folks, and this nominating committee gets to pick from that list. Now, do we, as a matter of normal practice, change the one you picked? No. Typically, we just sort of rubber stamp the one that you as your region picked, but not always. I actually sat in nominating one year where the nominating society nominating committee did not want the person that a region picked to be on the board, and they did not select him. They went down the list and pick the next guy. It does happen. So then the last group we have to pick, last but certainly not least, are the directors at large, the DALs. Every year we pick 3 new ones, and we pick an alternate, because it's not uncommon for one of the 3 that you pick to not be able to serve for whatever reason. They changed jobs, something happened, they got to thinking about it and said, no, I don't want to do this. Who knows? So we picked 3 new DALs and 1 DAL alternate. These are the regions whose DRC is coming up for us to talk about. 7, 8, 9, 10, and RAL. We have to pick a new DRC for those 5 regions this year. This is what we talked about earlier. If you're a candidate, you can't sit here. So you're gonna, if any one of you gets proposed for a position, you get the big decision letter, and you got to decide which way you want to go. But you cannot sit on nominating if your name is being considered as a candidate for any of the board positions. And you may have a conflict of interest. If your spouse got selected, then you need to let us know that my spouse has been selected as a candidate and I'm sitting here, and we may ask you to leave the room. I mean, you don't have to resign because of that, but you do, there are probably some conflict of interest things that you would be asked to leave the room and not participate and not vote and all that. So this is a little bit of an expansion of what I was talking about in terms of procedure. The president-elect, which normally should be the treasurer moving up, and the treasurer, we will vote on separately, especially the treasurer selection. That's maybe the most important decision we'll make. So that's a separate vote. We don't want that intermingled with anything. The VPs could be voted on as a group. I will tell you that we don't normally do that. All the years that I've done this, we did separate votes for the VP, and then the top 2 candidates got that kind of thing. But you could do it as a group. The DALs we do vote on as a group. Here's 6 candidates. Write down the 6 names that you want in order, and we vote on them as a group instead of voting on one at a time on each 6. And vote on them as a group and rank them, and then the tally, whoever we appoint to do the tallying, they'll give us a readout of how many and when you do that, what happens is you get 3 people got the same number of votes, so you have, or 4 people might get the same number of votes, and so you have to do a runoff, and but it's a good procedure. The system works. So then this is what we were talking about in the DRCs. The regions are required to give us 3 candidates. Most don't. Most of the time you'll get a regional report that'll have 2 candidates but not 3, and I guess that's okay. But you rank them in order. This is the guy that we really want, or the girl that we really want, but we want 3. What I'm talking about is ranking them in priority order. And so all of you who are regional, when you get to your caucus, the goal is to get 3 candidates for DRC, and then you can rank them. This is the preferred candidate, and these 2 will do. But guess what? But we might, as a group, the society nominating might pick one of the ones that you think will do, although that's normally not the case. You got to have 3. And then almost always this committee picks the person that the region has selected, almost always. But I have seen it happen where they didn't. So then here's another really important rule. No one region can have more than 4 people on the board at any one time. Everybody gets a DRC. There can only be 3 other folks selected. Yeah. So there can only be 3 other folks from your region. So this coming year, the work that this committee does, don't bring anybody from Region 4 to the table. Region 4, starting on 1st of July of 2016-17, is maxed out. They have a DRC, Ginger Scoggins is a vice president, and 2 of the 3 new DALs are from Region 4. So they got 4 folks. We talked about a few weeks beforehand, you will get a lot of information. This is what you're going to get. I'm not going to read all of that. You can read all of that. But this is the stuff that you will get. And you're not going to get it in a box that weighs 25 pounds. It's all going to be online. So then your assignment is to do a lot of homework. You first need to be sure that you understand the rules. Since you're sitting here in this session, I think most of what's in the rules and the procedures we will talk about today, so you should be at least exposed to it. Review the bios and the qualifications for all of these folks whose names are going to get proposed. And you have to do that before you get to Atlanta. You'll be lost if you haven't familiarized yourself with the folks that are being proposed. You know, and that's always a discussion. Well, this guy's name came up, but I don't know this guy. Well, you got a month to get familiar with at least what that person is. There'll be a picture of that person. You'll see what they look like, and you just need to do your homework. You can do your own research. You got to be a little professional about it, and well, I heard you did such and such. That's not what we're trying to do. That's part of why our conversations are confidential, because you may come to the meeting in Atlanta with some information about someone that nobody else knows from reading the bios and all of that, and you may say, well, let me tell you, okay? I mean, that's why, you can do your own research, yeah. And you may know people better, than somebody else because of other relationships, not just ASHRAE relationships, but work relationships and whatever. The other part of your homework, that last bullet point is really important. You need to think about who it is that you want to lead your society. What are the characteristics of the person that you want? I can tell you that's really important. You need to be sure, you have a voice, and you need to make that voice heard, because you're picking the leadership of the society. Part 2. Those of you who are regional members and alternates, you have an extra step in this process, and you have another set of responsibilities. The first thing is you are a member of your regional nominating committee. Now, what's sitting here today is the society nominating committee, but you should have a committee, each of your regions, that consists of the people that are up here on the screen. You as a member, you as an alternate from your region, you're the first 2 members of your regional nominating committee. If your region has a reserve alternate, and I say that because not every region has a reserve alternate, and that's probably not a good thing. You should have a reserve alternate if you don't. So if you don't, one of your assignments is to go back to your DRC and your region and see if you can get a reserve alternate, because that'll be important to have your region properly represented. The regional member and the regional alternate are the first 2 people from the committee. And then there is a delegate and alternate from each chapter. When you're at your CRC, each chapter has a delegate and an alternate that will be, and the delegate is typically the voting member of the chapter for all regional business at the CRC. Those same delegates and alternates are also part of the regional nominating committee, not the society nominating committee, which is what this is, the regional nominating committee. And so the extra step in the process is that your region has to have a caucus, basically a nominating committee meeting at the regional level. And all the rules that apply to us at the society meeting apply to the regional nominating meeting, which is known as the caucus. So Why do you have to have a caucus? Because you need to participate in the process of bringing candidates to this meeting, to the society nominating. You need to find good candidates for the society director and officer position. Kathy Newton and I were just talking in the back. Let me make a comment about that here. You can bring recommendations from your caucus, from your CRC, for folks that are not in your region. If you know somebody that's in another region and you know them because you've worked with them at various other ASHRAE functions, it's okay for your caucus to say, gee, that person would be a great officer. In the case of Kathy and Chuck in Region 4, they can't bring up anybody's name from Region 4 for the next 2 years. So they're not going to be able to participate in the society level discussions in terms of bringing people's names unless, and it's okay to have your caucus recommend somebody outside the region. That's okay. But beyond what we're going to do here in this society nominating committee, the caucus also is responsible for taking care of the region and the chapters in that region. This is your purpose. Just sort of says what I just said. You need to find people to bring to this committee for discussion at the society level to move up as a director or an officer. But you also need to nominate people to serve at your region and represent your region, one of which is the DRC, whose name will come up here. But then you also have regional vice chairs for the various grassroots activities. And you also have a nominating person and a nominating alternate to serve as the head of the regional committee and also serve as what you're doing here today, sitting around this table. The region picks their representatives to sit here. Those are not board elected. The board has nothing to do with it. We as a committee have nothing to do with it. Each of you in your region gets to pick who your member and alternate is. And then last but not least, you should be recommending people for awards. ASHRAE has a lot of really interesting, significant ways to recognize service. We'll talk about them, we'll list them here in a few minutes. Talking about awards is not real common in a caucus, and it should be. It should be right on the top, right on your agenda. And you should not leave your caucus without recommending there's got to be somebody in your region that is deserving of one of the society awards. Okay? Yes, John?
Tom, I'd like to back up one step when you talk about regional positions. There is an opportunity to list 3 individuals in priority. You need to list, and you need to have at least 3. So if the person priority or recommendation isn't able to serve, that you have somebody else to go to. If somebody only served 1 year and it's a 3-year term, the DRC has something to go to. So that's
Good. Yeah, good point.
that has not been done.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but that's a really good point. Thank you. I know I went to my CRC last year, Region 4, and I did not go to their caucus. I don't know that I didn't think that was appropriate, to be honest. Even though I was sitting in as vice chair of the committee, the society nominating committee. This is the regional caucus, and I didn't think it was appropriate. I heard about it afterwards. You know, Chuck came up to me and said, we waited on you, and I said, well, yeah, so I went looking in the rules after that, and I don't think it's really clear in the rules, but my opinion is that the regional nominating committee has the same rules about confidentiality and the same rules about proper representation and all as we do here at the society level, and I just did not think it was appropriate for me to sit in on the regional caucus, even though I was an officer in the society nominating committee. So, Rob. And that's okay. That's okay. When I was DRC, I did that. You know, I opened up the caucus and said, here's your responsibilities and here are the names of the people you need to do, and it's up to you guys, and then I left the room, you know. So it's up to the, you know, if you want to do that, that's okay. And if I show up at Region 4 CRC this year and you want me to do that, then that's okay too. But I don't think it's appropriate, even though you sit at the society nominating committee, for you to crash a CRC's caucus, because that's a closed meeting of the regional nominating committee, right? Okay.
I think our law actually indicates
Does it say that? Okay. I went looking, I couldn't find it, but it you know, that doesn't mean it's not in there. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm asking for a special dispensation when I go to the joint CRC Region 13 and RAL, because I've never been to a CRC and being on the committee, and I would love to be able, if it can work out, to at least come into each of those just a little bit to see the dynamics, because it's hard to be staff liaison for this committee and not have seen one work. So be thinking about that. If you want to say no, that's fine, but I would like to be able to at least see what's happening.
Are you aware of the confidentiality?
I'm aware of so many things because you all make me so aware of that. But thank you, Wade. I will sign a form.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
for everyone.
Every region. Yes, ma'am.
My question's about nominating the nominating. So if Devin and I are in the caucus, and they want to nominate one of us for the next year nominating, how do we handle that?
Well, I have a slide about that, but the quick answer to your question is you have to leave the room. Yes, Tom. Yeah, yeah. Tiffany's question was, and this is very common. The nominating regional nominating member and the regional nominating alternate are, one of the things you have to do is pick a nominating member and a nominating alternate for the coming year, and it's a one-year term. Okay, and it's not uncommon for the folks who are doing it right now to be re-elected. When that happens, they have to leave the room. It's, you know, because you can't be in there managing the process with about your own name, you know. So, yes, ma'am.
And to add on to that, let's just say all three of them are up for nomination, then the delegate of the post-CRC chapter is the person that resides.
Yes.
The nominations.
Thank.
To have that, and it's really up to the DRC as a nominating chair to kind of go through those things with the post.
And I think there's a slide about that up that'll pop up here in a minute. So we just answered the question. Yes, ma'am.
I think you touched on it, but to further explain that if your name comes up for any position in the DRC, not just nominating member or alternate, you have to leave the room.
Yeah, you have to leave the room. You cannot participate in the discussion because they might want to talk about you, you know, behind your back. And you cannot obviously participate in the vote. So if you are a regional nominating member or alternate and your name comes up, you have to leave the room. Okay? Yes, sir.
If anybody else is being discussed for the same slot, you have to be out of the.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, if a delegate or alternate is being, that's a good point, Tom. It's that what we just talked about doesn't apply only to members and alternates and reserve alternates. It applies to anybody in the room. If you're a delegate from your chapter and you're being considered for a regional position, you have to leave the room if they're going to talk about you. Yes, sir. Yep, that's the conflict of interest slide we saw a few minutes ago. Yes, absolutely. Okay, if you're the member or the alternate, you need to attend all of your regional meetings. Typically that means the caucus at the CRC, but sometimes, and I do know a couple regions that have a kind of nominating committee meeting outside of the caucus and the CRC, sort of a planning meeting. If that happens, then obviously you'll probably be involved in setting that up. But the point is, any meetings related to the regional nominating committee, the member and the alternate have to be there. The regional member is the chair of the caucus. That's pretty important. And Jennifer highlighted what happens if everybody leaves the room. But the regional member basically is the chair of the caucus, and you if you are a member from your region, you will be responsible for setting all this up and getting the meeting ready and all of that. You're the chair. Paul, did you have your hand up?
Well, I kind of jumped to this next point here. Going to go to this bullet point, but for clarification, this happened when I was DRC. And that slide leads me to believe that we would send report directly to Mary. But as DRC, you were always asking me where's my regional report. I had to get it so I could put names forward. So can you clarify what is that process?
Okay, so we changed the CRC worksheet, so it doesn't say that it goes to Jeff Littleton, which all of you know doesn't go to him, but it says that it did. So we changed it to go to me, and the nominating member sends all of the pages to me, but forwards the page that the DRC needs to sign to them. They only don't see the first page, correct? So they need to send that separately to me, that they've signed off on that sheet. Does that answer your question, or is it still not answering?
Kind of. So the form tells me to send the page to the DRC.
Yes.
Before I didn't get it, and I kept asking for it, and they said, well, you're not allowed to see this stuff. And I said, I'm being asked by Mary to sign it.
Yeah. So let me ask his question in a different way. Does it go to the DRC or does it go straight to you from the regional member?
I get it in a number of ways. Sometimes I get the whole I just need ultimately that one page with the DRC signature. A lot of you send me the whole package without the signature of the DRC, and then it specifically says which pages the DRC cannot see, but I don't think, they should see who they're signing off on.
Yeah, I guess my question is, and maybe it's more of a directive, that we can remove certain pages from the packet, send that directly to our DRC, say you send that in, we'll send the rest.
Yes, and then when I get everything is when I send the letter, which I have not done because I haven't gotten it back from all three of the spring CRCs, but I have two of the three. Then I send a letter that copies Mr. Littleton that says, I have everything. And we go through, and I don't know if you know, Claire Neamy's job title changed, so she not only works with me on this, but is the one that is in charge of all of these rosters. So that's why when you get a call or email from her, you need to listen to it, because it's kind of coming from me, but it's from her to say, we don't see the same thing you're seeing that you're putting forward. Or you need to communicate, I'm looking at Tina because I can think of a situation. You need to communicate, not that she did it wrong, I'm just saying, you need to communicate as a group about who you're putting forward. Then they meet the requirements and a number of things before we get a name that's not going to amount, there's just a lot of dynamics. So I know people want to welcome people to a group, committee, and I know RBC, but we need to know if they meet the rules and that you signed off on.
Richard?
What does the DRC not supposed to be able to see?
I have the form pulled up.
Thank you.
It's the first page. It's clearly marked on the pages, right? The bottom of the first page is in bold and it says, no, do not send this page to the DRC. And then there's some other bold blue text that as it goes in. Important, CRC should complete the charts above and forward parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the DRC, who should complete the chart on page 5. Then the DRC sends completed to the NCS, NCS will forward to President-elect.
Yeah.
As someone who's done this, I would recommend you send all of the pages to Mary to say, I've sent them to my DRC, they have pages, whatever. You send the second piece to the DRC and say, you need to finish this and send it to Mary. Right?
There you-
Don't even copy me on that, because then that helps me know whether I'm need to bug on.
Right.
So, where is it?
Yeah, I only asked the question because when I was DRC, I didn't get it. And she was asking me for that, and they kept telling me we're not allowed to.
Yeah, good. All that's good.
It's on the form now.
Yeah.
It clearly states.
Yeah.
Send these parts to the DRC.
Yeah, so the short answer to the question is read the form.
Read the instructions, all
Yep. Follow the instructions on the form. Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, one point I'd like to point out that during the process, if the nominating member leaves the room for election or discussion, I think the host, the delegate of the host chapter will facilitate the voting and the discussion. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it depends on who leaves the room. If the member leaves the room, the alternate takes over. Yeah, but if both of them leave the room, which is what Jennifer said a minute ago, then the host chapter delegate becomes the chair of the meeting. Yes. Well, if you have a reserve alternate, yeah. Sometimes you don't. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Well, you have to pick. Yeah. Pick somebody. Yeah. I don't know.
Can I say a couple more things about the form?
Okay, we're back to the forms. Mary wants to say a couple other things about the forms.
So, I don't think this is part of the business meeting last year, so I don't think it's exposing any confidentiality, but we all put an ad hoc together last year to go back over the CRC worksheets. We changed things. We asked the people on the first page that you asked them if they're willing to serve. So if you put David Underwood for DAL for next year, that you actually, someone's talked to him, because we have found that we waste a lot of time in the fall talking to people who were never asked. So that's really, so we did a lot of things like that to change it. The group did a great job, everyone had a lot of input, but it's a dynamic document, which means as you begin to see that we need to make changes, that needs to be brought forward, because the whole idea was to make things clearer and user-friendly and helpful.
John?
One last thing on the CRC form. If the DRC gets this list to nominate somebody for, let's say, RBC, and they've got a real problem with number 1 to prioritize, they can pick number 2, and it goes to the chair of members council, and they will have a discussion as to who they want to take forward. So that's
Yeah,
part of that process.
yeah, hold that thought, because there's a discussion about the RVCs here in a few minutes. So, all right, any more about the form you got to fill in? Read the instructions on the form. Okay, the caucus is a meeting of the regional nominating committee. And because it's a nominating committee, all the rules we talked about earlier for the society nominating committee apply. The primary rule, which is sacrosanct, is that nothing that happens in the caucus is divulged anywhere else. Everybody understand that? You cannot leave your caucus, and those of you who are regional people, you need to be sure that all your delegates and alternates understand that. They cannot leave their caucus and start talking about what happened in the meeting. You can't do it. And as Richard pointed out about the society discussion, the same rule applies to the regional discussions forever and ever and ever. You carry it to your death. You cannot divulge what is being talked about in these meetings. Otherwise, the integrity of the meeting is compromised, because people will just not talk and say the things they need to say if they know somebody's going to say, well, did you hear what he said about you? I mean, that's just... So here are some of the rules as they apply to the caucus. If the delegate from a chapter can't be there, or even if they're late, they are no longer the voting member from that chapter. They become the alternate for the chapter for purposes of the regional nominating caucus. Okay? And the alternate will replace that person as the voting participant. If he comes in late, and we'll talk about caucus sessions. Most every CRC I went to in the last few years, you finished in one session, but once in a while you need a second session. If you have been late for the first session and you are not the voting person from your chapter, they need to understand that they're still not the voting person even in the second session. Okay? Well, I guess you'll have to deal with that. If they had too good a time the night before and they don't show up for the meeting, then they don't get a vote. Yeah.
So I'm just asking, because that happened to us last year, where 2 or 3 of the chapters had neither person at the first caucus.
Then they don't get a vote. That's the way it happens. Yeah. Yep. Good point.
Are you saying the second session is the executive session?
No. What? Yeah. Yeah. And there's a slide about that here in a minute, but it is normal for 2 caucuses to get scheduled at a CRC, one on Friday morning, one on Saturday morning, for example. But most of the time, they get finished at the first caucus, and you don't need the Saturday morning caucus, okay? What we're saying here is, if you need the Saturday morning caucus and you didn't vote in the first caucus because you were late to the first caucus, you don't get to vote in the second caucus either, okay? So some of this is a repeat of what we said earlier about our overall responsibilities, but I think it's worth repeating. Even at the regional level, when you're talking about RVCs and different committee chairs, the office seeks the person, not the other way around. And again, you've heard this over and over and over. If you can submit when you submit the list of the candidates that you have agreed on, if there's more than one candidate in any office, you should list them in priority order. Who got the most votes? Who got second? Who got third? If you list more than one candidate, they should always be in priority order. Okay, so you can also make recommendations to the president-elect for society committee appointments. And I don't think the caucuses do a really good job of that, and they should. There are a number of standing committees. There's a list on a upcoming slide of them. But you know, things like finance, things like standards, you know, the standing committees of society. You may have someone in your chapter or in your region who would be really good at that. The president-elect, there are positions that are selected by the membership, then there are positions that are selected by the board of directors, and then there are those that are appointed by the president-elect. Most of the committees are populated by the president-elect. And so you can give the president-elect your recommendation. I think this person would be really good on this committee. And the caucuses sometimes forget to talk about that kind of thing. So here's the answer to the question you asked a minute ago. If your name comes up in a caucus, you have to leave the room. Okay? We already talked about this, so I won't go over it again. That means if you're a nominating member here, a nominating alternate here from your region, or if you're a chapter or a delegate in the room at your regional caucus and your name comes up, you basically have to leave the room. And you have to stay out of the room until the discussion and the election is finished. Candidates for regional offices. We will receive 3 names from each region for DRC. They will be in priority order, in the order that the region would like to see them. Their preferred candidate should be listed first, and then a second and a third candidate. Almost always, but not always, this committee then will pick the DRC from that list, and almost always will pick the preferred candidate, because the region probably knows that person better than we do. Then you will submit at least 1 name, but 3 if you would like to, in priority order, for folks for the RVC positions. Now, RVCs sit on a society committee, the grassroots committees, membership promotion, research promotion, CTTC. Those committees are all grassroots committees that are standing committees of society, but they're populated by the regional vice chairs from each region. So the region gets to pick who they want their vice chair to be, but the final appointment is by the president-elect, because it's a standing society committee. And so even though you've submitted a name to be the RVC for membership promotion, for example, the president-elect has final say. So that's why you need to submit at least 1 name, but preferably 3, just like for the DRC, so that if the first name is not acceptable for some reason, we have another choice. Okay? Yes, yes. I heard.
One question. Once you debate the RBCs or candidates for the regional level, you submit these last 3 pages to the DRC. The DRC will have the right to change any of these things. Is that correct?
The DRC, yeah, technically that's correct. The DRC, the regional nominating caucus and the regional nominating committee pick names for RVC, and hopefully they pick more than 1 name, but a lot of times we only get 1 name. The DRC does sign off on that, okay? And then it goes to the president-elect, who has, again, the final say, the society president-elect, because you are selecting someone who will be sitting at a society standing committee. Eileen, you had your hand?
Yeah, one thing that I did see listed here, and I don't know if you're going to cover it in another
No, there's not a slide, in answer to your question, there's not a slide about that because the Yay committee is still a little bit funny. That in the way that they operate. There is a Yay regional coordinator who, this is one of these, if it looks like a duck and acts like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. So the regional coordinator from Yay looks and acts and quacks like an RVC, but they're not. They are not a regional vice chair position officially. And the president-elect, they don't make the final appointment for those regional coordinators for Yay. And so it doesn't really go through the same procedure. That may change. There was a lot of discussion last year about making Yay conform to the society rules, but the Yay folks got mad about that. And they don't want to conform to anything. So
that was one of the changes that Mary made on the form. So the regions can nominate people
yes.
for YRC. So at least their names get put into consideration. So that was one of the good changes. But there's a lot of confusion with chapters and regions thinking that, oh, well, I can pick that person, and that's not really what happens. You can put as many names on that sheet, and then it goes to the Yay committee.
And I think part of the reason behind that change was DRCs were looking for some suggestions for a list, a prioritized list for them to consider, because some regions were struggling to pick someone for a regional position.
Yep.
So that's part of what the caucus can do, is help with that.
Yes, yeah, and the caucus should help for that. And by the way, I just want to tell you personally, I made a lot of comments about Yay because we like to pick on them. I think the Yay committee is the best thing the society did in the last 15 years. And even though they tend to be a bit of a maverick, I think that's a good thing. I think that is a really good thing. It's great that we have all of those young folks that coming in with a lot of fresh new ideas. So I like to pick on them. But that's a really neat group of folks, and we're very blessed that we have invigorated our younger members. Regional officers, which are basically the RVCs. The first bullet point is all about what Mary was talking about earlier. Do not submit names of people who don't even know their name is on the list. I mean, and you think that's crazy? It's not. That happens all the time. And people get nominated for a position and they get this, it may go all the way to where they get elected, and they get this letter that says, congratulations, you're the new something, and they go, what? I didn't know I was even being considered. I mean, that's nuts. So be sure that you always contact the person and make sure that they are willing to serve. Okay? Yes?
You should make sure that they actually have the right membership rate for that position they're being considered.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Rich. There are several qualification. You need to go through the checklist. Are they willing to serve? Do they have the right member grade? Have they the right kind of experience? Not all positions, but some positions require some qualifications before you can sit on that committee. Yes, sir.
One other thing about the letter of willing to serve. Please notify the people who you're asking to serve and let them know what's involved. Because I had a couple of people last year, when they found out when the meetings were, they decided they would withdraw their names. So that's very important for them to understand and know when the meetings are, so that they can arrange their lives if they so choose to serve.
Randy, did you have your hand up? Okay.
Who selects what's the procedure for the RMCRs?
Trying to get him upset.
Here's Ken.
Trying to get him upset.
Now I can come off my horse and join you.
No. The RMCR is a regional officer, and so the RMCR is selected by, we're going to talk about councils here in a minute, but the RMCR is selected by the region, just like the DRC is selected by the region. The RMCR will be selected by that region, and you should pick more than one just to give us a priority order just in case. Yes? Yes, but yes. Well, that's true. That's the difference. The DRC is selected by the region as well. It's in priority order, and then that list has to be approved by this committee. The RMCR is selected by the region in priority order, but those are council representatives, and they're not approved by this group. Yeah.
Tom, the president-elect approves it. I know because I did.
Yeah. The answer is that's the one council that the president-elect approves all of the membership and appoints all the membership. Tom, did you have your hand up?
Selected, I would say, is more like recommended, and then we select as a committee.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Nominated, we're the final approval for the DRCs. Yes. So, yes, ma'am.
What about ARCs?
Well, they're so now we've opened the can of worms. And Pandora's box is next. The ARC is currently a regional position. It is not a society position. It is a regional position. There are some motions coming forward to fix that, okay? And we'll see what happens to those motions. But currently, if your region has an ARC, it's up to you who you put in that spot, okay? So, yes, ma'am.
So back to one of the things that was asked about the DRC maybe making a change to a RBC position. It's important. When we get those DRC worksheets and we get the sheet from the DRC, Claire, Mimi, and I are constantly comparing, and if there's any discrepancy, we call and find out, is this a mistake, is this intentional, does everyone know, that's a big, important thing for us to do. We don't just, you should maybe take what the DRC says, but we want to make sure. In Paul's case, he didn't see the other sheets at one point. So we check everything to make sure that it's consistent, and if it's not, we ask the question, just to get confirmation.
This is all worksheets out.
Pardon? I think she sent them, someone asked, Tamara Catchings asked, and I think they're posted. If not, send Claire and I an email, and they're ready, they're done. They just, I think before we left, she sent them again, but they're ready.
How could they be ready without delegates and alternates?
They're ready to the point in which they can be ready. I mean, think about all the other things that come along that, that's why we want to send them to you so they can be sent in Word. That's the other thing. If you download them from the chapter group, they're in PDF. And we like to be able to send them to you in Word. So if you get them in Word, please ask us for them. It makes it so much easier to read.
So, and you touched on something that was always one of my hot buttons, even back when I was a DRC, is the delegates and the alternates and who they are from each chapter, and it has to do with, and this, by the way, has nothing to do with this committee, but the chapter information questionnaires that are never, ever filled out on time. And some chapters never do it all year long. I mean, unless you have that kind of information, you cannot address the problem that you're talking about. And that's an internal thing for each of you at your region, and your DRC has to handle that with their chapters and get the information that they need. John?
There's one point on the ARC, okay, and everybody thinks it's kind of a, private position. There is a requirement of, I think it's in the rules of the board, that the DRC appoint an alternate, okay? So if he's not able to attend the meeting,
Yeah, that's a
region is represented by the list.
right. That's the alternate, and that's different. In some regions it's the same guy, but that's not necessarily the case. Okay.
So when we say ARC, is it the alternate you're talking about, or the assistant?
Yeah. All right. So moving on, so we don't run out of time here. The second bullet point on this slide is pretty important. Also, when every candidate that we will see as a society nominating committee and every candidate that you will talk about at your regional caucus should have an updated bio. It is really easy these days to fix your bio at ASHRAE, but you will not believe how many are way out of date. And I mean way out of date. And so please, when you get hold of someone and tell them that their name is being considered and find out if they're willing to serve, and if the answer to the question willing to serve is yes, then the next thing you need to tell them is go online and be sure your bio is up to date. Okay? That's really, really, really important. Yes?
Real quick, some of you know in the office, we switched the systems that generate the bios. So a lot of things get generated because your name isn't put on a roster. But when they made that change, a lot of things in previous years, I don't know the date, did not get moved to the system. And there are some people that are in an age range that are looking forward to being officers, that some of that information does not show up on their bio. And again, Claire Nemi, we have the records, we can help put that information in or clarify that it's in there correctly. So some of you don't have to worry about that. Others, if you have been around for a long time, want that reflected.
So there's some other bullet points up here about the bio. If you have trouble updating it online, you can always get hold of ASHRAE and they can fix it for you. And that's the information on the third bullet point there. And then, again, you need to be sure that your regional nominating people have an up-to-date bio before they start talking about you in the caucus. That's the point, the last bullet point here. One of the things that we mentioned this earlier, that I don't think the caucuses do a really good job of are recommending people in your region for the honors and awards that society has, and there's a long list of them. We do a really good job of recognizing and rewarding service and experience at ASHRAE, but sometimes we forget to nominate somebody for that. And so you need to, in your caucus, make sure that you leave time to talk about who is eligible for awards. So when someone is eligible for award, the bio is most important. That's actually from the bio how people are scored to receive a number of the awards that we have. And it's also in the bio, it shows you if you have it shows that if you have the right kind of experience to qualify for that particular award. Some of the awards are point counts. and those are listed there. And that all that comes right off of your bio. Some of them are not point count. Some of them you need to be recommended for, and almost always you would need. The first thing that Honors and Awards looks at is the recommendation letters, and it's a first step. If your chapter president doesn't recommend you for that award, then you're not going to get very far. So as it says up here, it's highly recommended that a chapter president sends in their recommendation letter and a photo. People need. There's a lot of people at ASHRAE, and we see a lot of faces at these meetings, and sometimes it's good to put a face with a name. So yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the DSA and ESA were automatically done now by headquarters.
I think they're not automatically done. You have to be. They're automatically calculated. If you don't apply for it, you don't get it.
Okay,
Thank
you. That's where it's not clear in my mind.
Yeah.
That clarifies. Thank you.
Those awards too are like time dates, like May for DSA, not at the caucuses.
Yeah. But exactly. But the point is, if nobody nominates you, you could have enough points to have ESA 6 times. If nobody nominates you, you're never going to get it. And so that's where the chapters and the caucus should say, this person is ready for DSA, and then they're nominated, and then it's automatically calculated. So, yes, sir. You can. Oh, yes. You can self-nominate yourself. Absolutely. That's a good point. Both of those awards, you can nominate yourself. You can just tell society, I think I'm ready for DSA, and it'll automatically get calculated. Yes, sir.
Does society send who's eligible to the nominating chair?
No. Nope. You have to know that yourself. Either nominate yourself, or your chapter should know about you. Cesar, you had your hand up.
My experience is, I think it was the first time of she emailed me that I'm qualified.
That's because somebody was looking out for you, but that doesn't always happen, Yes. On several of these slides, you'll see links at the bottom. So if this link will tell you where to go to learn all you need to know about the awards. And so the next couple slides just list a few of them. Honorary member, there are not many of those, but there is a distinction for honorary member. Fellow, the F. Paul Anderson Award. I'm not going to talk about each one of these. The Public Service Award, DSA and ESA we just talked about. The Andrew Boggs Distinguished Service Award, the 50-Year Member Award. A lot of slides in here about all this. The Holiday Distinguished Fellow Award, the E.K. Campbell Award for Academics and Teaching, and the Hall of Fame. Those are all very distinguished recognitions for the work that our members do, and we need to be sure that folks are properly recognized. Okay? And that's a job of the caucus. There are also several awards for the work that you do at the region. The most significant is the Regional Award of Merit. That's actually a pretty big deal because it takes some work to get to that. That's also a point count, but it takes some work to get to that. There are chapter service awards, and again, this is just a reminder. The last bullet point here is that you should, as a caucus and as a regional nominating committee, not this society but the regional, you should keep track of at your chapters of who's ready for this, because those are significant recognitions. Paul.
Did that just recently
Okay. Then our slide is wrong. Okay. We'll verify that, but the slide may be wrong. So here's a little bit more, especially for Regional Award of Merit and CSA. There are some recommendations here of things that you need to do. You should have letters of recommendation. More than one is very helpful. And the letter should say things like, you know, and if they get this, this is the wording that you need to tell us what to put on the certificate, okay? These are all responsibilities. The reason all these slides are up here is these are all responsibilities of you as your regional member and regional alternate. You are the head of your regional nominating committee. You are the chair of your regional nominating committee. And all of this, if you want to, you know, your people to be recognized, this is your responsibility. We talked about this a minute ago, so I'm not going to repeat this. This is a list of the standing committees that you could recommend to the president-elect somebody from your chapter who would be really good on one of these committees. These are the standing committees that are appointed by the president-elect. The membership of those committees is appointed by the president-elect. And then the councils are elected, the members of the councils are elected by the board, but the board can consider names from a lot of sources. You may want somebody to be on pub council or tech council for whatever reason. You can recommend through your caucus to the board that they consider this person. And I can tell you, as having chaired one of these board subcommittees, the more names we get, the better we're going to be. Because sometimes we only get like 2 people for one of these council memberships, and you get hold of those 2 people and neither one of them want to serve, and you're in a heap of trouble. So the more names that we can get, the better we're going to be. We've made it easy. Again, these highlighted places on here are web links. You can go online and go to the volunteer section of the ASHRAE website and put names in. We're getting close to the end here. We talked about this earlier, so don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but at your CRCs, you will have 2 caucuses scheduled, but you don't need the second caucus if you can get done in the first caucus. And if you do your homework, you as regional nominating members and alternates, if you do your homework, if you communicate with your chapters properly and get this all set up before you walk in the door, you can knock this out in one session easy. And then you get to sleep for an hour later on the second day, okay? So it's really important that you as regional people kind of do your homework. Irene.
Usually, we, the nomination chair and member and alternate, we never make proposals of names, and we kept neutral. But we are not sure whether that's correct or not. We never discussed, we never took part in the discussion of a person, of a nomination. Is that correct or not?
You mean you as the chair and that's a good point. You as the member or alternate of your regional caucus, your regional nominating committee, you have the right to participate in the discussions. And you should have that right because you are the one who is then going to have to come to this meeting and have to talk about that person in front of this group, okay? And if you, just as an example, if there's someone being talked about at your caucus that you're not real excited about for some reason, you should probably say that at the caucus so that name doesn't get here at this level, and you have to defend somebody that you don't really care that much about, okay? So you have the right to participate in your regional discussions. What happens at the society level, and you can apply this to your regional level nominating meetings as well. What happens is at the society, at this room, in this room, when we vote, the chair doesn't vote. We can participate in the caucus, although we don't much because we don't want to over-influence the discussion. But the chair doesn't vote unless there's a tie, unless there's a tie. And you could apply the same rules to your regional meetings as well. Now, remember, there's a delegate and an alternate from every chapter. There's a regional member and a regional alternate who are chairing the meeting. Only the members vote. The alternates don't vote. The delegates from the chapters vote and the alternates vote. Those are the only voting members. And so that's the same rule in here, you know. At your regional meeting. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but it's a good question. You have the right to participate in the discussions, and then you can vote in the case of a tie or something. Yes.
We also have the right of nominating people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're a part of the committee. Yes, sir. Right. That's exactly right. Yes, that's exactly right. What'll happen in here, for those of you that have never been in here, when we start talking about somebody, the first thing we're going to say is, what does the region think about that person? You know, here's a candidate for a position, and that position is from RAL. Okay, not the position, that candidate is from RAL. The first thing we're going to do is look to RAL and say, do you know this person? Yes, we know this person. What do you think? Because if their own region doesn't think that much of them, there's probably not a lot of discussion that needs to happen in here, okay? And so that's the point. Is that you have the right, and you probably should participate in the discussions at your regional caucuses so that the wrong names don't continue to come up to us here at the society level. Good questions. Anything else? John? Yep.
There is also a statement when we talk about confidentiality that anything that's discussed in the executive session is already out of the executive session, and it's for that particular year. So all those files and anything you might have had from a previous year, by our law, is to be erased. So next year, you don't, unless you have personal knowledge, that's not true. Whole new committee. So what you discussed in the executive session of the previous committee, you can't share that unless you have personal knowledge. So we've had people try to carry the history forward, and that's really
John's point's a good one. You need to, there was a slide a while back where it said, your homework assignments, and the very first one was be familiar with the rules in the MOP. That's the very first thing on that bullet, that very first bullet on that slide. That's what John's talking about. Be familiar with the rules so that you you know what you're doing. Okay? All right. So next time we get together, we're going to be in Atlanta. You will get information, in addition to the information that we talked about that's going to be on the FTP site, and the things that Mary's going to send you. Mary and Claire are also going to send you travel information, you know, all of that stuff in plenty of time. The meeting starts at 11 o'clock, at 11:30 lunch or something like that on Saturday. So some people can come in Saturday morning if you are close enough and not have to worry about 2 nights worth of travel. And we will finish up at noon on Sunday, but we may not finish up before noon, and you don't want to leave until we are finished. When you're making your travel arrangements, don't get a flight that's going to make you leave the room before 12 o'clock. So we need to stay, everybody needs to stay until all these deliberations are over, and then you can travel home after that. We're looking for good things from all of you, and the keys to success are the bullet points behind. Everybody's got to do their homework. Everybody, the CRCs that are coming up in the fall, and the 3 that just finished, we'll have a good list of folks. This is the last bullet point because it's probably the most important thing we take out of this room is you cannot talk about what we say in Atlanta and what we say in Vegas in January and what you say in your caucuses. You cannot talk about that to anybody. Any questions from anybody before we go home? David? Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yep. David?
Will we have the material for the next meeting at least a month before the meeting?
Yeah, plus or minus. Yeah, I mean, the slide earlier said 3 weeks, and it really depends on you know, what we get from the CRCs, and you know, what kinds of nominating communications that we get from folks who want to give us names of people. You know, at some point we will, you know, we can't post the stuff and have it all there for you to take until we get everything back. Okay? I know.
So David, to be very honest, RAL and 13 meet at the end of September, and I'm going to be there.
Beginning of October.
Right, beginning of October, which means that I will not be able to compile their stuff, which I will bring back with me, and then I can send to you. So we already go send to them. So no, I don't know if it would be 3 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks.
Can we have the bio sketches in one file, tab by name?
Yes. Yes. For you, yes.
Me too. We
For you.
we actually do put that information together where it's pretty easy. You know.
One year we had to download it by individual names and then basically put it together ourselves.
Whoa, that's past stuff, Dave.
Yeah, that's
You may have actually talked about it in the meeting, so, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So just for you, you get the 22-pound box of paper.
In all fairness to Dave, I really don't mind your suggestions because you remember I'm the one that didn't send a big decision letter to 2 people 1 year. So I mean, it is important. What you do, you have a lot of material. So I do appreciate if there are things that need to be considered to be done differently. So thank you.
John?
Mary, is there a chance that you could send, you know, a heads up of some of those files away or help? Some of the other.
I can look at that, especially the business session things. So much of it is, like the suggested candidate list. It depends on what we get from them
David, you had a comment?
I mean, I think in essence what you're asking for is the files for the regions that meet in August. Can we get them early? And then that means the last thing we have to look at is the CRC for region 13 and region at large.
There are certain elements of it, yes. Some, because of how many recommendations people get, it changes the document. But yes, I will be more than happy to look at that, yes. I don't know anything, whatever. But David knows I love him, so.
All right. Thank you again for spending your morning with us. We actually finished an hour and a half ahead of time, which is good.